Hey everyone, it's Rob Ryder. This is August 4th, 2013. This is a pretty neat little video if you get a chance to watch it. Spacecraft sees giant hole in sun. 25% of the sun just blew off here a few days ago. And when did the guy put this in here? It was 3 days ago. NASA, dark sun, large chunk broke off, headed to Earth. And this Paul Begley is a preacher. In fact, I guess that's his site right there, paulbegleyprophecy.com. And so he's showing what prophecies this here might apply to. And it's all good stuff. Because I'm going to look to see what prophecy Sorry about this. This is the letter that the Pope put out on like the 11th of I'm telling you what. Alright, on the 11th of July, on the jurisdiction of judicial authorities of Vatican City State in criminal matters. Issued motu proprio, by his hand, as the sovereign Lord, let it be written, let it be done. And he's speaking for the Holy See, which is the government of the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church is all baptized Christians, baptized in water in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. That makes you one of them. And so I had, apparently somebody had posted a comment on my last video, because I had talked about this a little bit, and said that, this really only applied to Vatican City. Of course, it says Vatican City State. So what that means is the Vatican is a city-state. And as we'll see, that has its own definition. And the Holy See is the government. It's like the federal government of the United States of America. It's the government of the church, which is its own society. And each province is a province of the church. So like the province of Detroit is all of Michigan. Well, it's a province of the church. The hand of the Vatican City State reaches around the world. And they're going to take concurrent jurisdiction in a bunch of criminal matters committed against the security, fundamental interest, or patrimony of the Holy See. That by itself is huge. Forget everything else. Just that one line right by itself is huge. Go look at the definitions. Any other crime whose prosecution is required by an international agreement ratified by the Holy See, if the perpetrator is physically present in the territory of the Vatican City State and has not been extradited. So, what is the territory of the Vatican City State? That's all that really matters. There's, you have to remember that the Pope's flag is planted first on America, right? He gave charters to these other countries. And he said, well, I want to do is be able to convert them to Christians. He's not the one that told them to kill all these people. That was the people that went there. It's like them good Protestants that came here who had slaves, right? Where is that in Christianity? It's the kind of people we're dealing with, right? Those who hide behind Christianity. And they are in the church. You call them Masons, Illuminati. Call them whatever you want, right? They're apostates. They were baptized and they don't follow the laws of God. And, well, Vatican City State is going to now extend its jurisdiction concurrently. So really it's like the King's Bench in Old English law. It's going to have concurrent jurisdiction on all civil matters. And every court case that you go into is a simulated legal process. So if it's a simulated legal process, that's fraud. That's a penal code violation. And that's what they're going to enforce, is the penal code. For a purpose of Vatican criminal law, the following persons are deemed public officials. Okay, yeah, the people you would think. And then those who serve as representative managers or directors, as well as those who even de facto manage or exercise control over entities directly dependent on the Holy See and listed in the Registry of Canonical Juridical Person kept by the government of the Vatican City State. Any other person holding administration or judicial mandate in the Holy See, in the government of the Church. Permanent or temporary, paid or unpaid, irrespective of person's seniority. Jurisdiction referred to comprises the administrative liability. So they're going to make these juridical persons who didn't have any, they had immunity, or that's what they like to call it. Now they're going to have an administrative liability if they have anything to do with the church's property. So, what do we got here? Okay, so some definitions. A city-state is an independent or autonomous entity not administered as part of another local government whose territory consists of a city and possibly its surrounding territory. Undefined how large the territory is. A city-state can also be defined as a central city and its surrounding villages, which together follow the same law, have one form of government, and share languages, religious beliefs, and ways of life. Well, that really sounds like the Catholic Church. Historically, this included famed cities like Rome, Athens, and Carthage. All right, so all those places, Rome, Athens, and Carthage, their jurisdiction was as far as they could claim the territory for, and they had empires. So the Holy See is going to take jurisdiction over the entire world. What's an officer de facto? As distinguished from an officer de jure, this is a designation as one who is in actual possession and administration of the office under some colorable or apparent authority, although his title to the same, whether by election or appointment, is in reality invalid or at least formally questioned. Right? So the people that we go into the county, into the court, probably into most state offices, most federal government offices, right? They're just assumed the office. They haven't subscribed the proper oath, and they haven't put in an acceptance of office. They're de facto. Well, according to Pope Francis, even those de facto manage or exercise control over entities directly dependent on the Holy See. And entities are fictitious persons. And I believe the Holy See, that the Catholic Church, because it represents Christ here on earth, and He's the Father, we're all His brothers, or we're all His brothers, that they're the ones that funded our estate in the first place. As you know, as babies, they were our guardian ad litem, and they put something into an account, ones and zeros, because that's what the world works on now, and put it under your all capital letter name. That's the juridic person they gave you. I believe it's a fictitious entity, and right, so it's at least the entity they're talking here, and and then you were supposed to get it at the age of 21, and then we signed some damn piece of paper that gave it to the state, be it Social Security, be it whatever, that put it in control of the federal government, which operates de facto. Right? Everybody there has just assumed the office. So, okay. Officer de facto includes all those duties, includes one whose duties of office are exercised under color of election or appointment by or pursuant to public unconstitutional law before the same is adjudged to be such. And that's going to change on September 1st. It's going to be judged to be unconstitutional. That could be, the Rapture. 901. Load them up, put them in the cattle cars, take them to the FEMA camps. Oh, you thought we were going there? No, they are. Officer de jure. One who in all respects is legally appointed and qualified to exercise the office. Okay, so, of course, one is color of law. Officer de facto, that is a penal code violation. And that's what the Holy See is going to administer, is the concurrent jurisdiction over matters like that. So in there it said the security and the fundamental interest or the patrimony of the Holy See. Well, what is the security? Is the degree of resistance to or protection from harm. It applies to any vulnerable or valuable asset, such as a person, dwelling, community, nation, or organization. Right? And I'm from the nation of Christians. So they're going to protect the security of the Holy See, which is everybody who's within the government or under the government of the Catholic Church, a citizen of that particular government. So this Vatican II thing that happened back in 1965 or whatever it was, really what that was a constitutional convention for the government of the Catholic Church, who had for the last 500 years tried to keep bad Catholics out. Right? Well, apparently it didn't work so well, because people will swear to be, or they'll say they're baptized. In fact, they may even become a priest. Could have been a Mason their whole life. Right? Their whole idea was to infiltrate the church and divide it, and divide it, and divide it. And look how many little sects of Christianity we have. But we all believe in the same God, the same basic things, and we think that somebody else is telling us how we have to worship. And that isn't the case. It has nothing to do with how you worship. Again, in the early centuries of Christianity, if you wanted to go sit on top of a pole for 30 years and as a monk, they'd make you a saint. Right? That dude never went to church. No, but he was in the community. He had people stop by every day and ask him questions. He was the sage. You can imagine what he saw from up there, perched 30 foot high in the middle of the city, been there forever. It's like an eye in the sky. He could see every kind of human situation ever, and I'm sure he passed on the information. Anyways, fundamental interest, our interests that are constitutive of human well-being, regardless of our conception of the good life is. See, some people think the good life is having you be their slave, but that isn't necessarily constructive for human well-being. That's what a fundamental interest is. And the church has a fundamental interest in all human beings who are baptized Christians. I'll go even further. They say that no man should be persecuted. And so if you're not being given a fair trial where justice is being rendered, right, well, then you're being persecuted. Fundamental interests are always necessary to human flourishing, and fundamental rights seek to guarantee their protection. Okay, that's the security and the fundamental interest of the Holy See. And then the patrimony is an inheritance from a father or other ancestor, an inheritance or legacy, heritage, an endowment or estate belonging to an institution, especially a church. And so, again, they funded your estate, the church funded your estate. It's church property. You're your own little particular church. Your earthen vessel is a temple to God. Right? You're filled with the Holy Spirit. You're already filled with God. You're not waiting to be saved. You have been saved. And if you're a baptized Christian who's been confirmed into the universal church, then you are mandated by God to go out and speak in His name and conform the temporal order to His will. That's what they're telling us to do. And so, it looks like they're going to start making it a little easier to do it. Maybe it won't be so hard to find justice anymore. Patrimony, such a state as descended from the same family, the family of God. Estates which have descended or been devised in a direct line from the father, and by extension from the mother or other ancestor. It has been held that the word is not necessarily restricted to property inherited directly from the father. Patrimony is the total mass of existing or potential rights and liabilities attached to a person. Right? This is where you get to be an adult. For the satisfaction of his economic needs, and patrimony is always attached to a natural or juridical person. So our natural person, Robert Allen Rutluski, upper lowercase, attached to it is the patrimony, existing rights or potential rights in Robert Allen Rutluski, uppercase, all caps, your business. But it's the Holy See that funded it. They're going to protect that from now on. The Holy See is an episcopal jurisdiction of the Catholic Church in Rome. The primacy of Rome makes the bishop commonly known as the Pope, the worldwide leader of the Church. Since Rome is preeminent episcopal see of the Church, it contains the central government of the Church. Essential to the administration, diplomatically, the Holy See acts and speaks for the whole Catholic Church. It also recognizes other subjects of international law as a sovereign entity, headed by the Pope, with diplomatic relations can be maintained. Often incorrectly referred to as the Vatican, the Holy See is the same entity as the Vatican City-State. The Holy See is not the same entity as the Vatican City-State, which came into existence only in 1929. The Holy See, the Episcopal See of Rome, dates back to early Christian times. Ambassadors are officially credited not to the Vatican City-State, but to the Holy See. And papal representatives to states and international organizations are recognized as representing the Holy See, not the Vatican City-State. They're representing the government of the Catholic Church, the Holy See. Though all episcopal sees may be considered holy, the expression the Holy See is normally used in international relations and in canon law for Roman Catholic Church to refer to the See of Rome, viewed as the central government of the Roman Catholic Church. It's the central government of the Catholic Church. Even de facto, manage or exercise control over entities directly dependent on the Holy See. Well, what's an entity? An entity is something that exists by itself, although it need not be of material existence. In particular, abstractions and legal fictions are usually regarded as entities. Okay, well, your legal fiction, because your legal name is your all capital letter name, that's your legal fiction. Well, those entities are all part of this. Where did it go to? Where's the patrimony? Oh, crimes committed against security, the fundamental interests, or patrimony of the government of the Holy See. Includes your estate. Actually came from Christ. It's yours. They have to protect it until you wake your ass up and come get it. But they're not going to let them disturb it anymore. And then there was one other thing here. This was an archbishop's take on the letter that the Pope wrote. So Vatican City, July 11th. Here's a statement released by Archbishop Dominique Mamberti. He's the Secretary of Relations with States, right? So now we're talking all the nation states of the world. The laws approved yesterday by Pontifical Commission for Vatican City-State bring about broad-ranging normative change necessary for the function of this state, entirely sui generis, which is of its own kind, is called upon to carry out for the benefit of the Apostolic See. The Apostolic See extends over the whole church. And if you're baptized, you're within the Pope's jurisdiction. The original and foundational aim of the Vatican, which consists of guaranteeing the freedom of the exercise of St. Peter's ministry, basically, indeed requires an institutional structure that, the limited dimensions of the territory notwithstanding, assumes a complexity in some respects similar to that of contemporary states. Established by the Lateran Pacts in 1929, the state adopted the judicial and civil and penal structures of the Kingdom of Italy. All right, not the democracy of Italy or the Republic of Italy, the Kingdom of Italy. They took on the structure of a kingdom in their entirety. In the conviction that it would be sufficient to regulate legal relationships within the state whose reasons for existence lies to support the spiritual mission of Peter's successor. The original penal system, constituted by the Italian Penal Code on July 30th, 1889, and the Italian Penal Code 27th thing. So these would be good to look at if you want to know what the penal code of the Kingdom of Italy / now the Vatican City State is, or the Holy See's penal code. Confirms the criminal legislation of 1929 while waiting an overall definition of the discipline. Here's an interesting thing. This is the 100-year anniversary of the Federal Reserve Act. And I think that the Federal Reserve Act, because in common law, a lease cannot be longer than 99 years. And I think that's what the Federal Reserve Act was. It was like the Panama Canal, or when they leased Hong Kong, right? It was a 99-year lease. And for 99 years, we were leased all the real estate, real property of America was leased to somebody by an act. And this would be the 100-year anniversary, and it was like December 22nd, 1913, that it was first enacted by apparently 3 guys in Congress, right? There were only 3 congressmen there. I don't know the whole story. There's people that could go on about that for years. Nevertheless, this is a 100-year anniversary. And maybe that's what this has something to do with. Because when they put that in 1913, the Pope / Vatican City, well, the Vatican City State did not exist. They had taken all the land from the Pope, and he basically considered himself a prisoner of the Vatican. Right? They took away the papal states in Italy to make it all into a democracy and left him nothing. And he didn't get anything back until the deal with Mussolini, who of course didn't last long, but here's the church. And then I think what they did is they took all that cash they got from Mussolini, plus they already had a lot of cash, money, gold, whatever. And the Pope hired a really smart financier who said, don't ask too many questions and give me a get out of jail free card and leave it with me. You'll never worry about money again. And I think he went and crashed the stock market, and the church came in and bought it all on the cheap. And I'm sure they've done it over and over until they control everything, right? That's what they had to do to get control, because things were put into place while they had nothing to say about it. They were no longer a sovereign power. They were deposed kingship. But a king is only deposed as long as he doesn't have a country. Once he gets one back, he's the king. And they gave him 180 acres. Well, we got a king again. Now this king, as we call him, is elected. It's an elected office, right? He's elected by the cardinals. He could be impeached by the cardinals, right? The Pope is only in there as long as the Pope is doing what it says to do by the Constitution. That's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to ensure that the laws of the realm are enforced. It's his only job. Well, it's his main job. The most recently approved laws, when not constituting a radical reform of the penal system, revise some aspects and complete it in other areas, satisfying a number of requirements. On the one hand, these laws take up and develop the theme of the evolution of the Vatican juridical structure, continuing the action undertaken by Pope Benedict to prevent and combat money laundering and financing of terrorism. In this regard, the provisions contained in the 2000 United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, yada yada yada, illicit drug traffic, and International Convention Suppression of Finances of Terrorism are to be implemented along with other conventions defining specific terrorist activity. Now, we all know there's some really good legislation been written about a lot of things. It just is never followed. Right? I'm sure if you go and read these particular conventions against, right, it's probably really, really, really plainly written about what the crime is. It's just nobody's enforcing them because they're all de facto. And the only de jure government, in actuality, is the Holy See. The new laws also introduce other forms of crime indicated in various international conventions already ratified by the Holy See in international contexts and which will now be implemented in domestic law. So within the domestic law is the law of the government of the Holy See. We're just going to call it domestic law now. Among these conventions, the following are worthy to mention: the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, and Degrading Treatment or Punishment. It sounds like going to jail here in America. International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, Right of Child, and 2000 optional protocols. The Geneva Convention on War Crimes. We're going to start charging for war crimes. A separate section is dedicated to crimes against humanity. I'm telling you, it's Armageddon. Along the lines of the 1998 Roma Statute on the International Criminal Court. I got to go read that. We need to figure out what this International Criminal Court is about. Because these are all international crimes, and all that the Vatican City State's going to do is enforce them. They're going to offer the venue to take these people to. From a substantive point of view, further items of note are the reversion of crimes against the public administration, in line with provisions included in the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Another good one, right? Against the public administration. That would be them sitting on the other side of the frickin' desk or counter who won't let you see anything and say, this is just the way we do it, right? Just the way we do it. We don't really follow laws. We just, we do it by custom. While many of the specific criminal offenses included in these laws are undeniably new, it would, however, be incorrect to assume that the forms of conduct thereby sanctioned were previously licit. No, they were never lawful. It's just no one was charging them for it. These were indeed punished, but as broader, more generic forms of criminal activity. The introduction of the new regulations is useful to define the specific cases with greater certainty and precision, and thus to satisfy the international parameters, calibrating the sanctions to the specific gravity of the case, right? So if you're guilty of crimes against humanity, you're going to prison. Some of the new categories of criminal activity introduced, for instance, crimes against security of air or maritime navigation, or against the security of airports or fixed platforms, may appear excessive considering the geographic characteristics of Vatican City State. Yeah, why would they be signing up to those things when it's a 180-acre little piece of ground in the middle of Italy? However, such regulations have, on one hand, the function of ensuring respect for international anti-terrorism parameters, and on the other, they are necessary to ensure compatibility with the condition of so-called dual criminality, to enable the extradition of persons charged or convicted of crimes committed abroad, should they seek refuge in the Vatican City State. Special emphasis is given to the discipline of civil responsibility of juridical persons derived from a criminal violation. All right, so civil responsibility of juridical persons. Introducing sanctions for juridical persons involved in criminal activities as defined by current international legal framework. And all these activities are, all these things we're talking about that are through the United Nations. From the Geneva Convention up to the one they did on corruption here recently. This is to end an attempt. To this end, an attempt has been made to reconcile the traditionally cautious approach observable also in the canonical order, according to which society cannot be punished, with the need, ever more evident in the international context, to establish adequate and deterrent penalties also against juridical persons who profit from crime. The solution adopted was therefore that of establishing administrative responsibility for juridical persons. So up until now, since society cannot be punished, if you assumed an office within the society and the society cannot be punished, neither could you. You were protected by your office. You're not going to be protected by your office anymore. First of all, you're de facto, so you don't really hold an office. It's unconstitutional. At 9:01 September 1st, you're guilty of a crime. Think about that. Judge, attorney, clerk. Significant modifications are introduced also in terms of procedure. These include updates in the discipline of requisition, strengthened by measures regarding the preventative freezing of assets, an explicit statement of the principles for fair trial with reasonable time limit and with presumption of innocence. Boom. But they can pull the trigger and freeze your assets, anybody's assets. The formulation of regulations regarding international judicial cooperation with adoption of measures established by a most recent international convention. International judicial cooperation is the same as concurrent jurisdiction. And the Vatican City is taking concurrent jurisdiction on all this stuff. From a technical and regulatory point of view, the plurality of sources available to experts was organized by means of their combined with harmonious and coherent body of legislation, which is the framework of the Church's magisterium and the judicial canonical tradition, the principal source of Vatican law, takes into account simultaneously the norms established by international conventions and the Italian juridical tradition, reference to which has been made by the Vatican legal order. In order to better order a legislative work with such broad-ranging content, it has been drafted as two distinct laws. One brings together all the legislation consisting of modifications to the Penal Code and the Code of Criminal Procedure. The other will instead consist of legislation of the nature which does not permit a homogeneous section within the code structure and is therefore gathered in form of a later or complementary penal code. Okay. Finally, the penal code reform hereto presented is completed with the adoption by the Holy Father Francis of a specific motu proprio, also bearing yesterday's date, which extends the reach of the legislation contained in these criminal laws to the members, that would be the laity, officials and employees of the various bodies of the Roman Curia, connected institution, bodies subordinate to the Holy See, and canonical juridical persons, as well as pontifical legates, diplomatic staff, the Holy See. This extension has the aim of making the crimes included in these laws indictable by judicial organs of the Vatican City State, even when committed outside the borders of the state. There's what I was looking for. Making the crimes included in these laws indictable by the juridical organs of the Vatican City State, even when committed outside the borders of the state. It happened in Michigan. It didn't happen in Vatican City. However, it's still a crime, because they'd be part of the laity. Among the laws adopted yesterday by a Pontifical Commission for Vatican City State, there is also law consisting of general legislation on the subject of administrative sanctions. Law already been proposed, yada yada yada. Sometime has long awareness of an expedience of an intermediate third kind between penal and civil offenses, also in relation to the growing relevance of administrative offenses. Oh, we had penal, we had civil, now we're going to have administrative offenses. It must be that additional section they were talking about putting in the penal code. As a discipline of principle, the provisions of such law would be used whenever another law established the imposition of administrative penalties for breach of law, no doubt to specify the procedure for the application to the competent authority and the order of other minor effects. One of the cornerstones of the system introduced by this law is constituted by the so-called rule of law, as a result of which administrative sanctions may be imposed only in cases defined by law. And that's why they had to define them in the law, I guess, in the penal code. The procedure for implementation is undivided into a phase of investigation and challenge of the infringement by competent officers, and a second phase of the imposition of a sanction, which will fall within the competence of the President of the government. Finally, there will be a right to appeal heard by a single judge, except in those more cases or more severe penalties for which jurisdiction of the court is established. Okay, so for attorneys and judges, you're going to want to pay attention to that, right? This is what's going to happen. It'll be an investigative challenge of the infringement by the competent offices, and a second phase of imposition of sanction penalties. To conclude this brief presentation, it may be observed that the laws indicated above are notable not only for their undeniable, substantial, and systematic relevance, but also because they represent a further significant step on the part of the Vatican legislators toward the refinement of its legal code, necessary to assume and promote the constructive and useful proposals of the international community with a view to more intense international cooperation and more effective pursuit of the common good. Ooh, that's a lot to be said, but Pope Francis is going to, right? This is Armageddon for them. Well, all we're going to see is the horse's ass and hooves chasing them over the hill. But any other crime whose prosecution is required by international agreement ratified by the Holy See if the perpetrator is physically present in the territory of the Vatican City State and has not been extradited. What is the territory of the Vatican City State? I say the province of Detroit is a territory of the Vatican City State. The province of Chicago. Right? If they're within there, they can be extradited. Well, they don't need to be extradited. They're already in there, which is why you just have jurisdiction from the international court they were talking about. All right, good enough. Okay, I'm going to do another video on here shortly on the decrees that it looks like we need to be asking for us to claim our office within the Holy See and get that patrimony they're talking about in our hands instead of being administered by somebody else. Okay, you all have a great day. See ya.